Hello and welcome back, I'm Sean, and today we're checking out the latest in Google's mid-range smartphone, the Google Pixel 9a, and to see if this is a good little smartphone. So let's check it out. So kicking things off, I actually really like the stock Android experience. No bloatware to slow down the phone, just pure Android and the way it's meant to be experienced. And if you're seeking that, then this is the perfect experience. I also love the camera that you get with this phone, and although it's just a simpler setup here, the ultimate lens quality, the way the viewfinder image looks, and the output itself are all great looking and totally justified for its price. And you're also getting a large battery life, coming in at 5100 mAh, and from my battery life test, it works pretty well, lasting quite a long time for a continuously extensive use, so we're going to check that out later on as well. And you even get wireless charging with this phone, albeit as slow as 7.5 watts of wireless charging. I also like the fact that this phone is rated IP68, meaning you get almost maximum protection for dust and water, giving you peace of mind when using this next to the pool or accidentally dropping it in. Also with Android, Google promises you 7 years of software updates and security updates, meaning you get to keep this phone for long, or you want to pass it down to your kids and don't have to worry about upgrading their phones anytime soon. Alright, so what can be better with this phone? And I think the first obvious one is the lack of expandable storage. And I know that Google has great cloud storage that you can subscribe to, but at 256GB of maximum internal storage, that's quite limited by today's standard, especially when you're having more and more 4K shots stored in your phone. I also wish that there is a 3.5mm headphone jack retained on their mid-range smartphone, and with that option you can at least connect nice high-res headphones to them. And I think it's understandable that flagships want to retain that beautiful seamless design, but do keep it for the mid-range phones. And it would be nice to see better materials on the back of the Pixel 9a, and it's mainly plastic built here, and although it has a nice aluminum frame, having a nice back cover would up the premium feel of this phone. And at the time of this recording, there are two variants of the Pixel 9a that you can choose from, and the 128GB model come in at $499 or around 2,699 Malaysia ringgit, and the 256GB model comes in at $549 or about 3,199 ringgit. So do check out the pricing online to find the best deals. And if you find value in what you hear and like what you see, do subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so the YouTube algorithm can pick this up. And if you want to buy this phone, do check out my links below. So display wise, you're getting a 6.3-inch actual OLED display coming in a resolution of 2424 by 1080, making this a full HD screen with a pixel density of 422.2 pixel per inch, making it a beautiful and sharp screen. Google also gives you a smooth display technology with a refresh rate from 60 to 120Hz adaptive refresh rate. You're gonna get nice smooth scrolling when it needs to. Protection wise, you're gonna get Corning Gorilla Glass 3. It's not the most fantastic protection here, but at least it's got some branded protection to it. And the phone comes with a 1800 nits of brightness in HDR mode and gets to a nice 2700 nits in peak brightness mode. So if I turn off adaptive brightness here, and with that I can actually increase the brightness to its maximum, and this is I think at 2700 nits, which is super bright. If you look at content in the night, this is too bright to use, but under the bright sunlight this is pretty good. So watching videos, looking at photos and browsing website looks great on this phone, and it feels natural and comfortable without feeling too cramped. And the screen size here is 6.3 inches, definitely feels big enough for most day-to-day use. So with my standard battery test, here are my results testing this 5100 mAh battery with my standard YouTube test that I run through with all the phones that comes through my studio. What I'll do is I'll put a full screen, full brightness. In this case, I remove the adaptive brightness so I can access the maximum brightness of the phone, and also playing YouTube at maximum resolution, and here are my results. At the first hour, I was pretty excited because it drained pretty slowly and consistently. Actually, it was very close to the S25, but it starts to drop more significantly quicker at the later stage. But by the first hour, it dropped down to 96% battery. And moving on to the 4 hours mark, it was down to 74%, and I let it run through the night, and at the 8-hour mark, it went down to 41% battery. So just to remind you, for the 4000 mAh S25 base, at the 8-hour mark, it was still at 66% battery. So later on, moving towards the 10-hour mark, I'm down to 23% battery, and at the 12-hour mark, it went down to 9% battery life, and at 13-hour and 13 minutes mark, it hit the 1% battery. But this 1% actually lasted the longest for another 12 minutes, and at the end, it lasted 13 hours and 25 minutes for a truly extensive test for using this super bright screen. So the Pixel 9a comes with Google Tensor's G4 chipset, a decent mid-range chipset, but when compared to Snapdragon's 8 Gen 3, it still kinda underperforms the Snapdragon in both single and multi-core processing. And along with the 8GB DDR5 RAM, you're not getting flagship performance in your day-to-day per se, but good enough that you're still gonna experience many of the tasks smoothly, and even playing games feels great. For instance, when you're watching YouTube, you're going to get great performance when watching it in 4K with HDR activated. However, when you swipe in and out of the app, I do see a millisecond stutter that most people will dismiss it as nothing, but I figure it's worth pointing out. Also, I tried playing 8K content on YouTube, but it only maxes out at 4K resolution. Also, speaking about YouTube, I noticed that when playing at 4K HDR for a while, the phone does start to get warm around the aluminum frame. It's not hot, but just slightly warm. When playing games like PUBG, you get fantastic performance and you can play upwards of Ultra HDR graphics at ultra frame rate. Playing it in this setting feels great, and the gameplay is still smooth with no stuttering, but I do notice that the frame rate hovers around 30-40 frames per second. And for best experience, play in HDR graphics at extreme frame rate and you get to experience that very smooth 60 frames per second gameplay with this device. So very impressive given that this is a mid-range chipset and only 8GB of RAM. And with this phone, again, like I said earlier, you get to choose between two models, 128GB and 256GB of storage, and there isn't any expandable storage. Hence, at least in 2025, I hope to see 512GB as an option. 256 is really quite limited by today's standards. Alright, so let's talk about the design of the Pixel 9a, and what Google is doing here is trying to blur the line between budget and premium, and to that extent, it kind of works. So you're looking at a device that at first glance could pass off as one of flagship Pixels. It's got that classic Pixel camera bar. Well, not really a bar anymore, it's more like a clean pill-shaped module with two lenses tucked inside, and it's way more subtle than before. It's flat and it's symmetrical, so no unnecessary bulge here, which is nice. But if you compare to its flagship brother, you do see some resemblance, but probably this thing is not that long. So the back of the device is not glass, it's actually some kind of plastic composite, but you wouldn't guess it from a distance because if you look at this, the matte plastic here, smooth and it doesn't scream budget. And honestly speaking, this plastic means you don't have to baby it that much and it wouldn't scratch as easily or crack as compared to a glass back. So the frame here is aluminum, so there's still that solid, cold to the touch feeling when you pick it up. There's no creaks, no flex on the phone, it's very well built. And the sides of the phone is now flat and it's a total switch up from the curvy A series Pixels of the past. It feels modern, sits nicely in the hands, and some might even say kinda looks like an iPhone. At the front, it's a 6.3-inch OLED display, flat panel, slightly thick bezels for 2025 as you can see here, but it's still symmetrical, so it still kind of looks clean. You also get a hole punch camera sensor at the top here, and for protection, you're going to get Gorilla Glass 3 at the front. Nothing crazy, but enough to keep it from scratching on day one. And in my opinion, I think the Pixel 9a, design-wise, it punches way above its weight. It's not flashy, but it's really functional, so it's clean, it feels way more expensive than it actually is. So I'm gonna be honest, because with this camera setup here, especially on a typical mid-range smartphone, I was really hoping for a more modest outcome. Decent photos, nothing to shout about, but I was gladly surprised, and the photos captured from the 9a is very pleasing and satisfying. So the phone comes with 3 cameras, so 2 at the back and 1 at the front, and the rear here consists of a 48 megapixel sensor with a f1.7 lens, as well as a 13 megapixel ultra wide at f2.2. So unlike other phone brands, you're never really going to get to shoot the 48 megapixel settings, as this is not a setting that you can choose, and Google uses pixel binning technology of the 48 megapixel sensor to create a sharp and beautiful result in a 12 megapixel resolution, so 3000 by 4000 resolution to be exact. So with that, I noticed the shots are very soft, natural, the colors are great, very natural, there isn't any over sharpening happening here with the cameras. Everything here just looks great, there isn't any optical zoom lenses here, so any zooms that you see is all digital zooms. They're very usable but not the sharpest. However, if you shoot in the normal wide 1x configuration, you get almost corner to corner sharpness and the photos look non-digitally enhanced. The ultra wide here is decent, but same goes to every 13 megapixel ultra wide on this planet. It lacks in clarity and resolution. Yes, it's still gonna get a nice ultra wide shot, but the photos won't have the resolution when you zoom in, but for what it's meant to do, plenty good enough. Night photography is where it surprises me the most. It looks gorgeous, and thanks to that pixel binning technology, images here look sharp with very minimal noise. Just look at some of the nightscape photos that I have here, and these are straight out of camera with no extra processing, and they look just beautiful. The front 13 megapixel camera also looks natural and nice, and even shooting under low light seems really usable. Very impressive cameras overall. From a video standpoint, you're getting 4K up to 60 frames per second on the rear camera, and it also looks beautiful. Video is sharp and smooth, and if you fancy some slow motion, you can only shoot in 1080p, but upwards of 120 or 240 frames per second, which is denoted at the bottom of the camera as 1/4 or 1/8x respectively. So at the front, you're gonna get a 4K 30 frames per second video quality, and frame rate is not something you can adjust here. So sound quality is basic with this phone. It's not bad, but it's not great as well. And with the Pixel 9a, you're getting a stereo speaker setup. So one speaker at the bottom as well as one in the earpiece area at the top. Of course, with any smartphone, bass is the lacking aspect of it, and vocals is great but pretty flattish, and highs in my opinion can be a little sharp as well, especially when you're listening to it loud. When you do hear some distortion, maybe around 90 to 100% volume. So overall, I'm loving this release of the A series this year with the Pixel 9a. Great performance, especially gaming, buttery smooth 60 frames per second with PUBG. Camera is also great performer here, and although missing the telephoto options. So what do you think about this release? Are there any features you hope to see in a mid-range phone like that? Let me know in the comments below. If you also want to check out some other smartphone reviews on my channel, click on this playlist right over here. And if you want to check out my latest video, click right over here, and I'll see you over at those videos.